perfect, and we should end about 5 till.
Okay.
Okay. So Malcolm, how long have you worked at the First Year Experience office?
I've been at the First Year Experience office since spring of 2009, so about 5 years.
5 years?
Yep.
Okay. Now, what brought you to Chico State?
Initially, honestly, I chose Chico State because my girlfriend that I've been with now, it's been 10 years, going on 11 years. At the time, I didn't want to be too far away from her, so I'm from Sacramento, and I think my options were Sac State. I think I got accepted to Arizona, and I got accepted to Chico State. And my parents said I couldn't go to Sac State because it was too close, so I chose Chico State. They happen to be alumni, so I was like, I guess I'll know some people. So I did know some faculty and staff before I even got here because they went to school with some of them at this university.
So do you plan on staying, or do you think you're gonna move away from Chico eventually?
I'll be moving away. Yeah, I'll be moving away as soon as I get out. Just because I'm a communication design media arts major, and my particular interest is radio DJing, and so there's just a larger market with more opportunities in like San Francisco, Los Angeles, as opposed to Chico. It's just really small.
Now, honestly, have you felt accepted since you came to Chico in general?
Yeah, I do. I think that there's like lack of education in some areas just because you have people who may have not had to be exposed to an African American or any minority for that matter. So there's that barrier, but I've never really felt like people were just like, oh, why is he here? You know, like so.
Yeah, so nothing outright.
No. I mean, there's the occasional racist person that drives down the street and yells, "Hey, N-word!" Like, you know, like I mean, there's that, but I mean, you're gonna find that. I feel like, you know, if you go to the right areas, is a given. So, but I'm not like sitting here like my Chico State experience was terrible, and you know, no, it's fine. It's all good.
So let me ask you, and it's okay to say, you know, I don't want to answer that, but
okay.
How do you identify racially or ethnically?
You know, I guess it's kind of I don't want to say sliding scale, but I mean, I'll refer to myself as African American or black. You know, those are the two that I usually throw around. So, but it's kind of interchangeable for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever been misidentified? As weird as that sounds.
No. I think I've never. It's always just been black or African American. Usually black. Black is the one that, you know, most people. It's just you're black. You know. So, but African American, I feel like it kind of got more introduced. In the college level of learning, you know, that's like the politically correct term in some cases. I was exposed to it as a child, but you know, generally speaking, I don't think I've ever been, you know, mislabeled as something else.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, in just first things come to your mind, what do you think of when you hear the word stereotype?
I mean, I just think it's just kind of like the general thing that people associate with a group, and it could be any group. It doesn't have to just be people. There are stereotypes about college students or colleges. There are stereotypes about those who aren't college educated. So I think it's just a kind of a general pool of assumptions that you attach to something without really having gone in to really get to understand or know whatever that person is or whatever it is.
And now you just said right there that you know, college students sometimes get attached. So what are some of the, you know, when you think of college students, what are some of the stereotypes you know, instantaneously kind of go with?
Well, I think what I'm going to say is probably tainted from my communications background, but short attention span. Like, I mean, as much as we're here to go in depth, we aren't paying attention because we got social media. So, you know, short attention span. Young is something that, you know, tends to always pop out as a stereotype of college students, although anybody can go to college. I think those are two, just short attention span and young. I mean, really, it's just youth, you know. And I guess I don't know, kind of like you have a better opportunity to better yourself. So I don't know if that's a stereotype, but that's something I generally think of when I think of college, that we're all here to try and get something better.
Yeah, so you see it sometimes as a good thing.
Yeah. Although I will say in Chico, we do have a bad rap because of Playboy in the 80s saying that we were #1 party school, and we have never recovered for that. So
is that where it came from?
From my understanding, yes. You know, it kind of came from, you know, they came here, I guess, one year, and then they said we were the #1 party school, and then We haven't had that title as far as rankings, like official rank, for years, but it's a stigma that's never really left the university. So I know the stereotype that I usually get is when I go home and I talk to people and I say, oh yeah, I'm at Chico State, they're like, oh, we know what you're doing up there, like, you know, we know what you're doing. Or a weird one, I'm a disc jockey, and weird one that I had is I had to DJ a party for a birthday party, 50th birthday party last August for some family friends, and the person that it was for, he joked and he said, you know, we won't be playing any of that Chico music. And I was just like, what is Chico music? I don't even know it.
Pretty broad.
Yeah, you know.
So now let me ask you, within stereotyping, and because you are, you know, an African American and a Chico State student, on or within the Chico State realm, whether it be, you know, in the job or just on school, have you ever been stereotyped within the college setting by your peers or others? Yeah,
you know, one of the things, you know, I mean, being an African American male, for me, at least in my experience growing up, I can't speak for every person that's African American or identifies in that way. You know, one of the things that I know is that, like, we tend to be loud and excited and passionate about what it is that we talk about. And so, in front of the BMU auditorium, there's some steps that kind of, you know, they're just concrete steps. People can sit there and do homework, whatever. You know, about a few years ago, there were probably maybe 10, 15 of us out there, and it was mostly men, mostly African-American men, a few ladies, but not very many. And we were having a conversation, and people were really passionate in it. So, you know, we're getting louder and louder and louder. And to us, it's normal. And I actually saw some people that we knew, and they said that it looked like we were, you know, angry or like we were fighting. I was like, really? Like, you know, because I was like, we're just having a good time. But you know, it seemed, you know, to them it seemed hostile of some sort. And so, you know, I mean, it's just interesting how you could have a group of men, African American men, and they get loud and it's hostile or it seems hostile. And then you could have a group of somebody else, and then that's not the first thing that people think. You know, so when they told me that, I was like, you know, I was really, you know, kind of eye-opening, surprising, because I was just like, like, you know, I didn't know that we appeared to be that way, but I guess I'm just used to it, you know, so.
So, I mean, when they said that to you, did you feel it was, you know, like a personal, like, attack on you at all, or do you think it was more like just a broad, well, that's what I saw?
I think it was more the latter. It was a broad kind of, you know, I just observed this, and that's what I was thinking. Because, you know, I started thinking, it was a woman who said this, and so, you know, I started thinking, like, okay, like, you know, if she's thought this way, and, you know, she feels it, I wonder what other people, just generally speak, I mean, how many people probably have walked past and said, oh, you know, it looks like they're upset, it looks like they're, you know, getting ready to get into an altercation of some sort. I mean, I was like, you can't be the only person, so.
Yeah. And that, you know, brings up another good point that I was eventually going to make, which is, you know, in that situation, you were, you know, told that this is what I thought. Have there been other situations on campus, you know, within the Chico State realm, that you have believed that someone may have, you know, used a stereotype, or maybe because you were doing something like that, that someone maybe have, like, looked at you, or that people might have probably thought, oh, that's just what, you know, black people do, or that's what just Chico State students do.
Right. You know, in relation to Chico State students, I think I won't say, it's not necessarily action where they necessarily saw me per se doing something, but more so just a general perception that we're just kind of like irresponsible drinkers, you know. You know, we've had, a few years ago, we had a student who passed away because he took too many shots of alcohol at a bar. And so after that, there was this huge movement on campus last spring to try and talk about alcohol and drug abuse and, you know, those sorts of things. And so there were these summits that the campus threw together and held inside. They hosted them in the BMU. And so the first summit had faculty, staff, community members, students. And one of the things that I found really peculiar is that, you know, there were a lot of alumni who were coming in, and they say, you know, I'm so-and-so, and, you know, I graduated Chico State. And then they say things like, you know, I survived, or, you know, thank God I came out all right. And it's like, well, if you already have this sort of notion that coming here is setting us up to feel like we're lucky for getting through, then you kind of don't really give us as students a chance to build a case to show that we're serious about our studies, and that I can tell you right now, when I fail a class, I fail a class. Like that's an F. Like there's no, that is not, and if I get an A, I earned that A. So it's just interesting how you could have people who are actually alumni, they were students once, kind of help perpetuate this idea that Chico State students don't take their education seriously, or that it's not serious if it's at Chico State. So I mean, I think that would be an instance on a student side. On a personal side, as far as being African American and being a black male, I think the biggest one that I see is that walking around at nighttime and the reactions that you get from people when they see you. I actually intentionally, I try and make myself look less threatening, because I know that when I'm walking, down Warner after class and I see, a woman, just a woman in general, it doesn't even have to be a white woman or it's just a woman, that when they see me, they immediately think, okay, I gotta be alert, and they should be alert because there's a lot of crazy people out there. But the fact that I just fall in that category, I've spent a lot of my time up here, if I'll try and walk across the street and go to the other side just so they feel, more comfortable. So it's not something that's necessarily verbalized. Never stopped anybody to have that conversation with them. But you after seeing it so many times, you kind of can tell when someone, their eyes kind of see you, and then it's like, oh God, I need to, be more alert, be a little bit more safe. Or suddenly they pull out their phone and they're having a conversation. It's just. So that'd be the one thing that it's been consistent since I've been here.
Well, that's crazy. Let me just check the time. Okay, we're doing great.
Okay, good.
Okay, so, and let me ask you this: have you ever, found yourself stereotyping other people? I mean, we say that a lot of times that we do it, just unconsciously. Have you ever found yourself within the Chico State area kind of going, oh, these whether it be frats or this or that?
Right.
Have you ever experienced that?
Well, I know for myself personally that there are stereotypes that jump into my head like immediately all the time. I mean, it's something that I can't avoid it. I don't think any human's really capable of getting rid of it, because the way humans generally work is we categorize things and put them in boxes. That's a survival mechanism that's innate within all of us. So that's always been there. I know one of the ones that have happened for me is that some of the sororities, they have a particular vibe amongst just students in general. And so since I never really met very many people in that sorority or anything like that, when they bring up that sorority, I have this automatic thing that jumps in, like, okay, I think about everything that people have told me. And then I have to slap myself in the wrist and be like, okay, but you don't want to bad mouth them. So it's always a work in progress, because I think that when there's uncertainty and unknown aspects of something, you just naturally jump to what you know, and that may be a stereotype, even if it's not really an accurate representation of whoever or whatever it is.
So would you still say that stereotyping in general is still prevalent in today's Chico State? I know you kind of elaborated on that already. So, I mean, do you feel that it's just a natural thing that people stereotype anyway?
Yeah.
But is there also probably more than just that? Which
I think it's just natural. I think that is something that can't be avoided. I think that the key thing is to try and educate yourself to get the tools to try and combat it. Because once again, it's just natural. I mean, we send somebody to a city that we've never been before, and we're going to immediately start stereotyping about how we're going to navigate that city until we learn otherwise. And so, I just think that as humans, learning the tools to be able to stop yourself when you do make snap judgments and stereotypes, things of that nature, can be really helpful, because then you can stop yourself from doing something that can, alienate somebody or make them feel like, you're targeting them in a negative way. I think just trying to become aware of those snap judgments is really the key thing. Because once you're aware, then you can start trying to unpack and undo those things.
So have you already read my question list, because you're just answering things?
Oh, really? Sorry.
No, because my next one is like, so what would your advice be? So,
I can answer it again if you need.
So if someone were to ask you, stereotyping in general and, you know, against whoever.
Yeah.
If there was one thing that you wish someone would take away when dealing with stereotyping, what would that be?
I think it's just the aha moment. You know, the realization that, oh, I don't know why I thought that, you know, or you realize the reason why you thought something was inaccurate, it was incorrect. I think that's the biggest thing to take away, because then that's when you start growing as a person, and being really open to more experiences, because the more times those aha moments happen, the more instances where you start to see, okay, things may not always be what I think they are, and so I'm going to avoid kind of categorizing anything into this box, you know. And so once you start getting that, then you start having a more open society where people don't stereotype as much towards each other.
I've never heard the aha, but that's a great, you know,
okay.
idea of it. So now let's say that there was an incoming freshman, and you know, they were, let's say, not from this culture, you know,
right,
exchange student or something.
Okay.
So what would you, you know, not only in dealing with it, but maybe being the aggressor, if you know, because they may look at our, you know, culture and stereotype us.
Right.
So what would you tell them would be, you know, something that they could do as a Chico State student? Are there resources or things that they should look for to kind of combat stereotyping? Or, you know, where could they go if they felt stereotyped, or how to go about it? Like, if there's a new freshman, what would you tell them?
I think one of the first places, and this is, at this point to me, it seems like a cookie cutter answer because it's one of the few spaces on campus, but the Cross Cultural Leadership Center is a good place to go, because that is what they specialize in. They specialize in putting together programs that bring together various perspectives, viewpoints, ways of life, and they all collaborate within this space, and it's a safe space. So they're accepted for who you are, and it's about kind of, you know, education for that. And that's kind of like a formal resource that we have. I think the informal resource that's really key, and people get here at different points in their lives, is being able to find somebody that can kind of help you navigate that culture that you're unfamiliar with, that is familiar with the culture. So it's kind of like a tour guide, if you will, because I mean, they're able to, you know, so for instance, when I alluded to an instance where I was on the steps of the BMU with, you know, about 10, 15 guys, and we're all there, and people thought that we were, you know, hostile or in a threatening situation based on how loud we were and how excited we seemed. Had there been somebody with that woman to help explain to her, like, no, this is just how they talk, and if you know the subject matter and how it's relevant to them to the point where they feel like they need to express themselves this way, you'd understand that it's really just them having a fun time and that they're just having a conversation. But since she didn't have that there, she can only go with what it was that she thought, which is, this looks like a little bit out of control. So I think that finding kind of an ally to help you navigate a new environment is always key, because then they basically decide to be that middle ground between, like, okay, I see that you have some differences, and I know that we have things that we do that may not be so clear, and so I can help explain those and make them clear to you. And then the other piece is that person who's being kind of that tour guide gets to learn from the person who has that cultural barrier, because now they get to say, you know, well, where I'm from, this means that, and clearly you guys use it, or you all use it in a different manner than what I'm used to. And so then there's this kind of cultural exchange that ends up happening, which creates less room for stereotype, because now you are also exposed to something different.
Yeah, exactly. So we're getting near the end. So
okay.
Just two last questions.
All right.
So now, in relation to the CSU Chico campus, how do you think that the campus, policy-wise, is handling issues of stereotyping? I know you've talked about, you know, the cross-cultural, you know, leadership center.
Right.
But overall, how do you feel that you have seen as a, you know, Chico State student? How do you feel that they've handled, you know, racism or stereotyping or anything like that?
I mean, I think that we have a long way to go, and I think honestly part of it has to do with the makeup of our faculty and staff. It's majority white, and so unless those folks are coming from walks of life where they are exposed to a lot of openness, as far as open-mindedness in different cultures, ways of life, and things like that, then it only allows for a particular perspective to go in. Not saying that all white professors have the same perspectives. That's not true. They all have their own perspectives. But when you start introducing other minority groups into the mix, and kind of making it a priority to have African American instructors, Latino, LGBTQ community instructors and things like that, then you start really starting to open up the types of the ways in which things are taught and a perspective that you get. So I think that's the biggest thing that I would say that we lack. Cause I think that the want and the initiative as far as trying to become more open to different ways of life and being able to deal with racism, stereotyping and things, I think it's there. I just don't know that we have all the tools that necessary just yet.
Now, let's say, and we'll kind of wrap up here.
Okay.
Let's say that you had the ability, and like I said, you're answering these questions, unfortunately. But that's good. That's good. You're doing my interview for me.
No, that's
awesome.
fine.
So let's say you had the ability, in any capacity, to make some strong changes.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do if you had the ability to make changes? I mean, you've talked about the faculty, but would there be anything else that you would try and do more of?
I don't know. I've been on campus for 5-6 years, and I've been extremely involved. I've done, talks on diversity. I've sat on panels related to diversity. I've done a lot of workshops, having to do with diversity. I was diversity chair for first year experience program, and so I've been around diversity and things, and I'm not sure what I can do. I don't know if there's much more that I can do. As a student, I mean, maybe create another organization where that's a student organization where that's their sole focus, because we do have the Office of Diversity and the Cross Cultural Leadership Center. But from the student level, for me personally, I feel like I've maxed out the ways in which at least I can fathom trying to combat it. It's just, I'm not saying there's not other methods out there that I haven't tried. I just know that as far as my brain is concerned, I don't think there's anything more that I can see myself doing, other than to continue doing what I'm doing, which is continue to be allies to other people, and continue trying to open my mind and understand things, because I can be closed-minded too. So I think that the institutional level is where I feel like a lot of the help could come from, because once again, like I say, when you have a faculty that kind of isn't that kind of has this blanket inclusion of various groups, then you really set your student body up to be, it becomes normal for you to go from class to class and have somebody completely different teaching you every single time, as opposed to what we have now, which you end up from instructor to instructor. And at least from my perspective, it seems that they have similar backgrounds to the point where I may not be able to relate to them, and that's across the board. Now, if you got people where maybe you can relate to one, but then you have various groups, then you're being exposed to more, and so then you'll be more accepting of more, at least from my perspective. It's not the right way. It's like there could be other ways, So,
like how you address the camera right there.
Sorry,
like,
camera.
Hey.
Sorry, camera.
All right. Well, you know what? I appreciate your time a lot, Malcolm.
Yeah.
Once again, this is for our intercultural communication course, CMS 855. Last words, any last thoughts or anything else that you want to make sure you said?
No, I mean, I'm glad that something like this, exists, and that, we have, I mean, it is communication, and one of the key things is being able to know how to communicate across groups. So I'm just glad something like this is happening, honestly, because hopefully it could be resourceful to somebody else,
All right. Well, that's
All right.
it.
Lovely.
Malcolm?